how to not fear
I,
dating as a 45-year-old, never married, single woman.
yeah, it's a great question. When I read that question, my heart, just even now as you're asking it again, just kind of drops a little bit.
Me
I
too.
feel, um, what I feel in that question, and this may not be what the person is thinking or articulating, but what I feel certainly in that is just there's a lot of fear, in that question. That's what she articulated, was that sense of having fear. Um, and there's a lot of reasons why somebody would still be single, at 45. And it's hard then to overcome those narratives and to then be thinking about, well, is there still hope? Is there still possibility? Is it still worth it for me? And I would say, yeah, that it is, that it's worth investigating kind of what dates have looked like for you. Again, investigating whether or not, what the process has been like. But I think that's also what would be helpful is to surround yourself with community. So recently, I got to speak at the National Catholic Conference for Singles, or
Anastasia,
National
I love
Singles
her.
Catholic Conference.
National Catholic
Anastasia, what
Singles
I forget.
Conference, I think. Anastasia Northrup.
That's
She's
it.
so
Thank you.
great, you guys.
Yeah,
She's so
that's
great. If you
great.
haven't heard of that, find,
Yeah.
ooh, I
So,
need to have her on my
so
podcast. I'm going to text her.
yeah, she'd be
Okay.
great. Yeah, so I was able to. I spoke at her conference here recently, and just to be in that environment. I mean, it was, and I would say that the average age was probably about 45, early 40s
Oh,
individuals who
perfect.
are single and are just trying. And so there is an element of going to that conference, for example, that obviously that you just want to meet people and have conversation. There's also an element, of course, you want to meet people not just for friendships, but you're hoping to kind of see where conversations, may go if future dates may emerge from that. So there's an element of this question that is, okay, well, how do you overcome that fear? The only way that you overcome that fear is by engaging with it.
Mm.
Any fear, any anxiety that we have, we always need a certain level of kind of, progressive desensitization to it. We need to be able to kind of
Mm.
tackle it in small bits to be able to say, okay, well, this fear isn't, I can overcome this, not by just kind of, jumping all in, but by gradually kind of taking steps that I need to take to overcome it. And so if that fear is present, then I would say, putting yourself in circumstances where you're with other singles, at least just with community, with friendship, with other people who are in your circumstances, you can share and vocalize those fears and recognize that there are other people who share those fears. That sense of community is already very powerful. So whether that's something like the conference that I mentioned, or going to a singles ministry outreach at your local parish or your diocese, or connecting with some other form of that, I think that's one thing. So you can have that support. The second thing is just continually putting yourself in the right circumstances. Like you said earlier, Elizabeth. I love that you said that. It could just be that there's a mismatch in values, and even in the mid 40s, single men or single women are just looking for casual hookups. Okay, those aren't the people you want to be going out with, and I'm sure this individual isn't in that camp. But it becomes difficult when it seems like everybody you go out with, that's all that they want, which is again why you need to surround yourself with good community. You need to be clear with your values, clear with what you're looking for, have what your lines are, your expectations are, but then being willing to just take appropriate steps, to put yourself out there in a way that doesn't feel too risky for you. I think practically those are some suggestions to consider for this individual.
I love it. And building on that, I'm going to take a different approach because I think what you're saying is
Do it.
important. And I had one other thing that I wanted to add is, again, I don't know this person. And I love that caveat of like, if we were sitting down to coffee and you were asking me your question, I could get some history, I could get some background, I could like see your heart a little bit, I could answer it more clearly.
Right.
So maybe this doesn't apply to this particular person, but maybe it applies to somebody else listening.
Yep.
And I think that when we fear things, it can be indicative of areas that we can grow and trust in the Lord. Because if you really, truly believe that God is a good father, that you have a good father who wants to give you good things, and if he's not giving you what you want right now, it's only because something better for you is going to come in a better time. I think that is cultivating that, working to cultivate that posture toward the Lord is something that I think is really helpful and really important. And So Pope Benedict, I love him, in this book that I can't remember the title now, which is not helpful to any of you. But the quote is that I want to pull out of it is he says, the church fathers say that prayer, properly understood, is nothing other than becoming a longing for God. And I go back to this quote over and over and over. I had it written on like a bookmark that I used in every book I read when I was, not exaggerating, when I was like discerning marriage. I was like, okay, I want to learn to pray. And I'm in a season of my life where I'm discerning marriage, where I want to get married, where I am longing deeply. So if I can figure out how to take this longing that I'm like directing horizontally for a husband and orient that toward the Lord, like recognize what I'm longing for is truly like Christ, the bridegroom, and the eternal marriage that is waiting for me in heaven. If I can figure out how to address that longing toward the proper orientation, then my prayer is going to be so much more fruitful. My relationship with the Lord is going to be so much more fruitful, and I'm going to be so much more at peace in this season and then in all the seasons that are yet to come. So I would just encourage this woman to take the longing that she is probably feeling so deeply and work in prayer to orient that to the Lord. And every time she's afraid of dating, maybe pray like the litany of trust or something. Like use the fear that bubbles up as an opportunity to turn to trust in the Lord and to like work to develop a deeper intimacy with him. And so then you may be a little bit disgruntled as a 45-year-old single woman, but you may not fear being single or fear the process of dating, like fear what it's going to take, or the wounds that you have in the past, or the things that have happened to you in your dating relationship that are making you fear dating in particular. Those won't be as much on the forefront because your trust in the Lord allows you to feel a deeper sense of security. That's what I have to add.
Yeah, so I'm going to piggyback off of that right there and just kind of add a little bit more because being 45 and single is hard. And I understand what you're saying, and I agree with that in terms of that prayer and bringing that. But we're talking about somebody who has been probably praying and filled with this longing for, 20 years at least.
Yeah.
You're looking at maybe even 25 years from your 20s to being 45. And that's a long time. It's a long time to be waiting. And that's a long time to just be like, optimistic and just like, well, it's just gonna work itself out type of thing. And so there's kind of and so I agree with what you're saying, but I'm also really just trying to acknowledging, the challenge that it is to hold that tension and to hold that hope and to hold that trust in the Lord, even over the course of, 20 plus years or something, whatever this individual, is asking this question. But again, what we're trying to speak to is what's the fear that's preventing this. And so when we think about hope, all right, let's talk about hope for a second here. And now looking at the psychology of hope, the way that psychologists define hope is that they say that hope is defined by having two things. It's the belief that the future will be better than the present, combined with the belief that you have the power to make it so. And so the psychologist researchers of hope use these kind of funny words where they say you have to have you have to have willpower, this desire, this interest. Okay, so you want to get married, you want to go on dates, you want to do that. All right, you have the desire for that. That's one aspect of the definition of hope. But the second aspect of the definition of hope is the ways, the capacities, the knowledge, the skill set, the pathways, knowing how to be able to accomplish that. See, when you then have hope, you can see that you have both. You have the capacity, the desire, and you have the capacity, and you have the patience to wait for the right opportunity to be able to engage in that. What that means is that anybody who has hope, anybody who's trying to actualize a goal in life or is trying to accomplish something new or bring about some good recognizes that the process of being able to accomplish that thing or to seek out that goal or to acquire that habit, whatever that is, there's no easy way to do it. Every process, every movement forward is going to have some obstacle. And so hope takes into account those obstacles. And so part of recognizing this pathways thinking is to say, well, what are the things that I genuinely have control over? Which is why I go back to this question for this person and saying, well, what genuinely are the things that you feel that you have control over? Yes, absolutely, we need to pray. Yes, absolutely, we need to be able to trust in our providential Father. Yes, absolutely, we need to be able to have God purify the longings within our heart. And the reason he forces us to wait often is it because he's forcing us to sift through our desires. See, not all of our desires come from the Lord. And so, but God through the virtue of temperance is asking us to sift through those desires so that the holy ones are the ones that emerge. And so they become exactly what you said from Pope Benedict, which is that then it becomes this longing within us that is purified, is then met with the Lord. Okay, that's a spiritual way of looking at this. That's beautiful. But then the other piece is, part of that is that the pursuit of what God has given to us as a desire, the pursuit of that is the thing that then actually makes us a saint. And so we think about like the parable of the talents, whatever talents we have, it's the engagement, it's the process. Seek and you will find, knock and the door will be open to you. You know, like there's an action oriented to the scriptures and to the spiritual life as well that we have to take into considerations. And so when we look at hope, we're trying to hold the tension of both of these of, well, what's the desire that's genuinely God-given? And where do I need courage and the capacity to be able to develop the skills that I need to go and get it and to go after it and to go pursue it? And so for this person who's asking this question, I'm challenging you and asking you to really kind of sift with both of these questions, which is certainly, as Elizabeth said, to take this to prayer, to bring this to the Lord, to unite your longings with him, absolutely, but then also have a sense of self as to what do I need to do to improve my capacities to be able to date. Like we said, going to conferences, being in singles ministry, looking at dating programs, reading books that kind of help you, because there's an element of this that is a skill, and I get that, and that can help you kind of develop some of the skills that we need to be able to go out on dates and to overcome those fears. So yeah, that's just a little bit of my thoughts, but piggybacking on what you just said.
No, that's perfect. I'm glad I went there because that's a really helpful piece that people have. And I love that that healthy control mindset, right? We know that she didn't say anxiety, she said fear, but we know that we as people feel anxious when we are imagining something in the future that we think we can't control. And that's what lends to anxiety. So I love that you said that, because I think there are a lot of people, particularly who've been waiting for so long, who can fall into anxiety about it. And what you're saying totally addresses that too. So this woman,
you fall into this,
and other people.
It's easy to fall into the scripts that this is just the way it's always going to be. And it's easy to fall into those narratives that become this negative self-fulfilling prophecy. And we're trying to tackle that,